We're going to work on improving our hip mobility today. You'll need a yoga mat, a lacrosse ball, and some floor space. Let's start in a kneeling hip flexor stretch, one knee down, pulling the other leg through and tucking your tailbone underneath you. Hips forward a little bit to find a stretch in the front of your hip. Holding this position and hanging out here, making sure we're not arching through our low back at all. Shoulders, hips are stacked. If you find you're losing your balance, feel free to grab something to hang on to. Do these next to a piece of furniture. Let's switch legs. Tuck your hips underneath. Nice, and staying in this lunge stance, you're going to bring both hands inside of your foot and inside hand rotating towards your front knee, reaching up to the ceiling, coming back down, reaching underneath your body, leaning elbow towards the floor. Let's do 5 reps on either side here. Knee is staying out wide throughout the rotation. You might feel this in your hip flexors, your hamstring. You might get a little bit of mid-back as we rotate. Making sure we're doing nice deep breaths through this whole movement. Nice, last one. And let's put both hands on the ground. Switch out your front foot. And now opposite hand is going to stay on the ground. Hand next to your leg is rotating up to the ceiling. Knee stays wide. Hips are forward. As we rotate, lean the elbow towards the ground and then back open to the ceiling. 5 reps. All right, bringing your hands off the floor, we're going to go back to our hip flexor stretch one more time. Starting in that half kneeling position, tucking your hips underneath you to find a stretch in the front of your hip. And switching legs here. All right, opening up our stance a bit as we bring both hands back down inside of that knee. Hand by your leg is rotating up towards the ceiling for a big stretch. Bring your gaze with you as you rotate up and down, taking your time at the top and bottom. And switching over to that second side again, 5 reps on the other side. Nice, as we finish those reps, we're going to move over towards the wall. Bringing one foot up onto the wall behind you and the other leg through into a lunge. Again, tucking your hips the same way. We're going to find the stretches lower now in our quad. If this is too intense, move further away from the wall so your foot is lower. If you need more of a stretch, moving closer to the wall so that your back toes are higher up on the wall. All right, switching over to the other side. Back toes on the wall, opposite foot flat-footed in front of us. Feel free to hold on to a piece of furniture or a wall if you need to during this stretch. And making sure we're not arching through our back, we're not pushing our rib cage forward, and our hips are staying tucked underneath us to create a stretch in the quad and hip flexor. Okay, finishing that stretch and coming down to sit on the floor. Hands behind you, taking some of your weight. Feet are nice and wide, dropping both knees in the same direction. Feeling a stretch through the inside and outside of our hip rotators here. Switching sides back and forth, taking a few seconds on either side, making sure that as you're sitting here, our hip is sitting into the ground. We're not lifting it off the floor. Sitting our hip into the ground, knees towards the floor. Nice. Let's switch back and forth one more time. If things are tight here, we might not have both or either hip and knee on the ground. That's totally fine. Just sitting them towards the ground, trying to sit into that stretch. Nice. Last one here. And coming up to take one knee on your mat, opposite foot out to your side, trying to bring our hips to level as best we can, then hands to the ground. We're going to feel a stretch in the groin and adductors here, just on the inside of your thigh. Holding this position, trying to sit that hip towards the floor. Taking a couple more deep breaths here. You can be on the side of your foot. You don't need to be flat-footed. And let's switch over to the other leg. Hips are pulling to level first, then hands to the ground. The stretch should be on the inside of your thigh. Okay, we're going to do each side one more time in this same stretch. One leg extended out, pulling your hips towards level with the floor, sitting your hips back as you bring your hands to the ground. And over to the other side in this stretch, last time, bringing your hips first to level, then sitting your hips back as you bring your hands to the floor, trying to keep that outside leg low so we have a stretch through the inner thigh. Okay, coming out of this stretch, we're going to move so we're sitting facing a wall. Sitting nice and close, bring one foot flat-footed on the wall, opposite ankle crossed over on your knee. Using one hand to press that knee away from you, you should feel a stretch in the outside of your hip. If this stretch is bringing your tailbone all the way off the ground, move a little further away. And if you're not finding a stretch and your hips are on the ground, you can move a little bit closer to the wall. Let's do the other side. Okay, let's switch back to that first leg and do another 30 seconds on either side. Crossing the ankle over, gently pressing away with one hand. And switching legs for our last time in the figure 4 stretch. Coming back up to sitting and grabbing our lacrosse or tennis ball, you're going to set it on the upper outside of your glutes, your glute med. Straightening the leg you're working on, rocking your knee over to put some body weight through that side and rolling around through the glutes. If you find anywhere particularly sticky, feel free to stop and hold on that spot for a little bit. Let that spot release. Take a couple deep breaths. Nice. Let's move over to the opposite side. So upper outside of your glutes and rolling around through there. Again, finding any particularly tight spots, give them a second to melt away. All right, as we finish rolling out our glutes, that's going to be the end of our hip mobility session for today.